Today, I want to talk about the ultimate and final pill, and it's usually a pill, or almost always a pill, that people don't actually appreciate or understand until much later in life. I'm only 26, and I kind of understand this concept kind of what I believe to be early on. I feel like most people my age, because I still consider myself a somewhat young adult, you know, whenever you actually reach maturity, it's anywhere between like I guess my age and like well never, because a lot of people won't never actually become mature. But I feel pretty good that I have a pretty good grasp on this final and most important pill in my opinion, and that's the family pill. That's the family and good friends pill. As opposed to being friends with people that you're just kind of like tangentially related to. You don't really have a vested interest in their success, and they don't have a vested interest in yours. And you can tell the difference. Well, there's a few ways to tell the difference, but I'll go over one real quick. If you've how long you've known them. So if you've known somebody for like 6 months, and you're just kind of like, let's say, you're more advanced in life. I assume that a lot of my people who are listening right now aren't as old as I am. They're probably younger. But let's say, you were older, and you were pursuing more of like a business opportunity with somebody. Like, let's say, I don't know, you want to do some fucking dance studio or something stupid. Well, you only know one guy who can dance, and so you team up via proximity, via necessity, and via convenience. And you become buds that way, but you're not really good friends. And it's very, very important to make this distinction. And if you are not good friends with this person, it is irrational and honestly a crime to actually care about their opinion. But yeah, I want to talk about how this is what I call just kind of like a normie. Like, they're your good friends, they're your family, they're friends of the family, the people that you actually hold near and dear, and you value their opinion. And everybody needs these people. If you don't have these people, you're going to have to look towards your family. And if you don't have any family, you're going to have to start building up something, because you won't live a happy or normal or mentally healthy life without the support of others. It's just a fact. But normal people, if you, like I said, it's more transactional. So what I mean by that is, whenever you get a friend, whether it be, and this is like very prevalent in like school, like public school, if you get like a friend, they're not really your friend. It's because you both receive mutual value from it. You can put enough of your differences aside and, not hate each other just enough so that you can reap the rewards of standing next to the other person. And unfortunately, this is very, very common. And it's just not very good. But essentially, like, what does somebody else, whenever they come into your life, what value do you think that they bring? Well, it's mostly entirely subconscious. But like, let's say that you're shallow. Let's just say that you're a normie. Let's just say you're a normie, and you just kind of have this emotional need for other things from people, like you need things from people, like you need to constantly feel validated or be given things. So let's say that you befriend the rich kid, right? And so you hope, and then the only reason why you're actually this guy's friend, you don't actually like him, the only reason that you're his friend is so you can get invited over to his house, so that you can become a quote unquote friend of the family, so that you could be given gifts, and that you can invite them over to your birthday celebration, and then they can give you expensive things. Or you think in a more subconscious way that if your home situation ever gets out of whack and you get kicked out, or like, let's say, I don't know, your parents are sick or something like that, you want to be able to have like this basically like a backup plan, despite never actually liking this person. You're just using them. And it's very important not to get caught up in that, people. I mean, I know that just trying to hang around people that you don't like but provide value to you, I know that can be tempting, but the things that they can give you hold almost no value when in relation to how massive the benefit and how massive the importance is of actually having a good and solid friends group. So, like I said, a lot of people treat relationships and friendships as though they're transactional. So these normies, if you ever stop providing them this value, if let's say people friend you because you're like, super athletic. Well, if you get into a car accident, now you're in the hospital for a while and you get kind of fat, that hospital food, they make you kind of fat, and like, you got a broken leg, so you're not really able to move like how you used to, and you were a part of like some sort of competition team or sports team, or you were, or there are certain, you better be sure that there were certain people. You better be sure that there were certain people who were only sticking around because they were trying to get that kind of like early investor mentality, because they know that they can't do anything in their lives. And so let's say that you wanted to be some sort of Daytona racer, or which, I think that's athletic. You want to be some sort of Daytona racer, like boxer, or, cage fighter, or whatever else that you want to do. And then other people picked up on your passion and your potential, and then they wanted to get like an early seat in, so that if you do make it, then they can kind of ride the coattails of your success. And if these people who have this mindset, intentionally or not, because they might not honestly be thinking this way, it might just be kind of in the back of their head, in their emotional subconscious brain, these people, if they no longer see that potential future value, they may just leave. And I know it's kind of like, for you, the person listening, you probably can't really fathom that, or thinking like, oh, I would never do that. Well, I don't know, that happens all the time. And that's why it's so often talked about, that whenever somebody gets sick, like nobody comes to their hospital, except for maybe like their boss, to just like, ho, I'm your big fat boomer boss, I hope you get better soon, bub. Like stupid shit like that. And then they leave. Like, they're not actually supporting you. Honestly, if I got sick, I would never want any of my coworkers to show up, because I know that they're not people that I hold close. And but yeah, I mean, this is a super common thing. If you stop providing somebody value, if you get sick, if you get into a depressive episode, if you even so much as crash your car, and you can't drive them around, and you can't, like, quote unquote, go and have fun, or like, you lose your job, or, you just get swept off your feet by something in life, which happens all the time. Normie friends who aren't actually your friends, they will just leave because they were only in it for, the transaction of it. And it's crooked, it's wicked, but that's just how a lot of these people work. Honestly, if they're trying to, if they just think you're cool, if they just think that you are well socially adapted, what they could be trying to do, and I've seen this so many times, it's super common, that they will be your friend, and then the instant that they get a girlfriend, they'll just like instantly leave. Like, so much for being friends. Like, it'll go from like hanging out all the time, like, and actually not like doing drugs and not like doing stupid shit, just like genuinely having fun and improving the quality of life itself, wholesome fun, seeding into like a future friendship, like a long-term friendship. And they'll get like a girlfriend, and then just boom, like fucking Thanos snap, my man. Like, they're just gone because, well, they didn't actually like you. They were just using you for the sociality that you brought to them, because they have a social need, and they didn't actually have a vested interest in you. They didn't care about you. It's just boom. And this really hasn't even happened that often to me. It's mostly happened to other people. So yeah, normies will leave. Another thing is that normies won't stand on principle. So, there's plenty. I mean, obviously, I've seen that happen to me. I've also seen it happen to a lot of other people. And I'm not even just talking like politically. I'm talking about, anything that it could be. If which your family would. Let me tell you a story. So I have super bad ADHD, and also got like a lot of memory problems for reasons I won't get into. But, whenever I was a kid, this was a long time ago. I'm not that old, but, I didn't realize that, but, buses didn't have security cameras. All right. They didn't. I didn't even notice it whenever they first installed it. And one of the first days back at like the school year, I was on the very back of the bus, because I was one of those kids. I was like sitting in the back, and I would sit next to the kid who had the giant nose and like the literal CD player with like headphones on, not even earbuds, like headphones on. He would listen to like actual CD albums, because I'm so old. Anyways, I took a marker, and this was back in the day. I'm sure it's full of graffiti now, but this was back in the day whenever the the seats were pristine, because I went to like a white school, and this was like a nicer school, and it was like further back in the day, so there was less tomfoolery going on. But anyways, I went on the very back seat of this bus, and I started like drawing something. I don't even know what it was. I completely forget. It was something stupid because I was like a teenager. I was drawing it with my friend Mac, and I had completely forgotten that I drew that. And so literally, like, not even the day after, like a week or more after, I had gotten like pulled to the principal's office, and they were like, "You marked on the back of this school seat," and I was like, and I didn't remember. I was just perplexed because I had memory problems. I was like, "No, I didn't. I don't know what you're talking about." And I was fully convincing. Like, you wouldn't be able to tell that I was lying, because I wasn't lying. I was telling the truth, because I did not remember drawing anything in the back of the seat. I was like, that's not even like me. That's so ridiculous. And so they were like, you're still getting like whatever. I never did out of school detention. I had like I was a bad kid. I had a personal relationship with the principal of the school. And he knew that if he gave me detention, I just wouldn't show up. I would just not, it was the country, and so things were different. But I basically just wouldn't show up. So he gave me in-school suspension. So basically my lunch was, I would take it with one of the meaner teachers. Is essentially what that was. But anyways, they tried to tell my grandpa, because he also worked for the school system, and that I had marked on it, and he asked me if I had marked on it, and I said no. I told him no, because I didn't remember doing it. And he was hooting and hollering and like standing on principle and fighting for him, basically like, my grandson wouldn't do that. Well, turns out I did, because I was a dumb kid. And then they had to go through the camera logs and everything to try and prove that it was me, because it became a big deal, because my grandpa and my family stood up for me. Maybe they shouldn't have. I mean, obviously, but like, in my defense, I did not remember doing it at all. I just did it. But anyways, that's what I mean by standing on principle. I hope that was a nice little side story for you, boys and girls. But normies won't do this. If somebody says something bad to you, to like a kind of like normie friend, they're just gonna either like shake their head and smile like, yeah, and just eat it up, and then forget that was ever said, because they don't have a vested interest in like defending you or keeping up your name, and or anything like that. A good friend will be like, what the fuck are you saying about my friend? Like, wait a minute, what the fuck? What's wrong with Timmy? Like, dude, Timmy's like my bro. Don't leave him the fuck alone. That kind of shit. But a normie friend will just, I've seen this happen too. Like, I'll be like in like a social circle or something back whenever I was like in high school, and like this dude that I thought was like a best friend of like this other dude, they would sit next to each other all the time. And then this one kid was like, dude, that kid is so fat, and I heard he fingered a girl on like the bus or something stupid, or like the cafeteria. I don't even remember the story, but like there was this kid, and he was just like shaking his head and smiling like, yeah, he's fat. And I was like, wait a minute, aren't you like that dude's best fucking friend? I didn't say anything. I was like, because I was confused. I thought I had missed something. But no, it's just because he doesn't stand on principle. He doesn't actually like his quote unquote friend. He's just, they're not friends. They just use each other for the kind of like social validation. And so, yeah, if somebody doesn't stand on principle for you, there's no point, they just, and if, let's say you've been friends with them for like, and you've actually gone to their house and everything, and you've been friends with them for like 6 months or more, and they choose not to stand on principle, or they choose not to like stand by you whenever like shit hits the fan, or like, let's say you get in a car accident, they're not actually going to show up or try to help you or call you or anything, there's no point. It's better just to drop them completely. So I do want to go over something. It's how I kind of see like how social hierarchies are. Essentially, from my perspective, I believe that people have a certain social value. So at the highest end, it would be kind of like One, the rich kid who's like very confident, is very good looking, has his own ride, and it's like a brand new car, and like he has like a lot of friends, right? Because he's very, very high social value because these people know that like he can provide a lot, you know? Especially if he's very, very charismatic and he's very friendly with people. He provides a lot of social value. And then at the lowest end, it's some kid that never learned to brush his fucking teeth or wipe his ass, and he's got covered up in pimples. And let me tell you something. So there's this what I thought of whenever I said lowest social value person. I thought of this person because I went to like a vocational school, and it was for technology. Obviously, if you know anything about me, I'm like pretty big into technology. And there was this fucking kid. Oh my god. He showed me furry porn on his laptop because people didn't. Well, I guess people did have like cell phones back then, but it weren't as common. I didn't have a cell phone. I had a flip phone. But anyways, he showed me like straight up furry porn on his laptop. And anyways, that's the whole story for another thing. I was like appalled. I almost fucking I don't even. Anyways, that's still traumatizing. But anyways, this kid was so fat. I had to hold my breath every time I walked past him because he was so stanky. I don't know if he didn't wipe his ass or if he was doing something that like he thought was cool, or like, I don't know, like some weird fetish thing about being stinky, like big and round and stinky or something. But man, he had the worst like buzz cut that was like a flat top at the top. He looked like fucking Frankenstein. He was like blonde. He was so fat. Well, not like that fat, but he was just fat enough to look grotesque and disgusting. He would always wear like a shirt that's way too tight, and it would like pull up right at like the sharp horizontal line where his belly fat meets his fupa. It would create a sharp horizontal cleaving line, and it would ride up, and it was always some weird fucking Disney shirt. This guy was autistic as fuck. Anyways, he would take a mechanical pencil, and he had a lot of legs pimples on his arm. I don't know how you do that. Eczema maybe. Anyways, take a mechanical pencil and he'd like open it up like a few clicks, and so he had like basically a syringe, and so I would see him like as if he was a junkie, like crossing his arms and like looking down and like very carefully inserting the fucking mechanical pencil into the head of his pimples and popping them that way. And he would do that in front of everybody, man. Anyways, yeah, Frankenstein, that fucking kid, the lowest social value person I could ever think of. He's never gonna have any friends, right? Except for like his family. This is what I'm saying. Except for his family and and like friends of the family have a vested interest in seeing him do better, right? Those who would attempt to teach him to wipe his ass. You know, people who would attempt to tell him like, hey, maybe you should get like a little bit bigger of a shirt and like, you know, wash your face and wash, you know, your body so you don't stink. That's what family's about, man. And it, you know, as silly as it is, hopefully it's not that bad of a case. Hopefully, you know, your worst battles whenever it comes to helping improve your family, because you should care about them. But I'll go a little bit more into that later. But hopefully your battles are more like, oh, don't be stupid. I don't know. Like, don't waste your money. Like, don't blow your money. Like they're happy. They're not. There's nothing like massively wrong with them. Like a normal person. It's just they're like dealing with like normal human stuff, like impulse buying into a hobby and then forgetting about the hobby like 2 months later. You know, that's super common. I do want to say that you don't see good friends often. This is the next thing that I want to go into. That let's say you have like a myriad of friends. You don't know who's a good friend and who's a bad friend. Well, I'm just going to give you a few tests, a few litmus tests to determine, or an easy way to determine who's good and who's bad. So if you think of a person, if you imagine a person's face and or imagine them coming over to your house, or imagine going over to their house, if that thought brings you stress, if you immediately bring your palm up to like your head and you start caressing your forehead and like the space around your eyes with your fingertips and you're like, oh man, then you know that that's probably not a good friend. What was I even saying? If you see a person all the fucking time, like all the time. Like they don't have a job, or they just work like a part-time job, or like they're like living at your house basically like rent free, or they just don't have any productive energy. That's probably not a very good friend. Good friends you see very, very seldom. Good friends have a very high opinion of you, but they are always, doing something else. They're working on their own personal projects, they're doing this or they're doing that. But, whenever they see you, they're happy to see you because they don't get to see you very often. If you want friendship, but you only want people who can game with you every single night after work, then that's never going to be a good person, because like how many people do you have to push away in your life? How many job opportunities, how much growth do you have to push away in your life to an unhealthy degree to be free every single night after work and then every weekend? Right? That doesn't make very much sense unless you live with them, and or especially if it's like your partner, like your fiance or wife or whatever. Then you've made that decision to kind of like spend your life together or whatever. And so, obviously you're going to see them. That doesn't count. But that's more like family, right? If you see your family all the time, that's fine, but you shouldn't count on like hanging out with them all the time, because if they're willing to do that without much coercion, then it's probably that they're just trying to get socially high, if that makes sense. You can never make people like you. If they're like these normie people, it doesn't matter how much social value you give somebody. If somebody is just your friend for social value, then you'll never be able to make them happy, because it's kind of like the give a mouse a cookie kind of thing. But, if somebody just genuinely likes you and they like you for no other reason than the fact that you are you, and then them seeing your face makes them happy, like your family, like your sister or whatever else, or like a really, really good friend, like a best friend. If they already like you, and they are fine with you being the way that you are, and you could stay the same forever, and you could like not really give them free shit, or like, well, obviously there's like shit that comes up in life. You get a flat tire and you need to help your bud, right? Like if he doesn't have anybody else to call, like anybody, like it's like family wise, you need to help your bud. But like other than that, if you basically never gave them anything, that they would still be happy being your friend. Those are good friends. Those are people who have a vested interest in you, and are not these normie kind of like transactional people. But the people who aren't this way, if you give them something, your relationship changes, and now they want something more. And so this constant, I want you to change. I want you to give me more stuff. I want you to like be more muscular, like be cooler, whatever else. And then the second that they find somebody that's like a better fit, then, and I'm not trying to make it sound like it's like dating or whatever, but like just from my perspective, this is just how it is. One of the last things that I do want to go into is how you have to be a good friend in return. If you are willing to take value from other people, even if it's your family, you shouldn't just take advantage of your family's generosity and them wanting to push you forward, assuming that you have like a decent relationship with your family and they're not just like horrendously shitty people. You have to return the favor. Especially if you're a dude, you have to make time for the good friends in your life. You can't forget about them forever. You have to message them. You have to check in on them once in a while. You have to call with them, even if it's just like once a week, or like honestly, even once a month. If they're good friends who genuinely like you, then you should try to keep in contact with them. You should try and keep in contact with your family. I don't keep in contact with the majority of my family because the majority of my family is not good people. So yeah, I mean, that's just me. But the family that I do have, that's like pretty good people, I do make a vested interest in keeping in contact with them. And whenever I think of my good friends that I've acquired over the years, and whenever I think of the good members of my family, and then I try to make a vested interest in, or I try to make an effort to continue to message them, to continue to stay in touch, to meet up with them, to, you know, do like the little barbecue shit. And, you know, I just think that that's really, really natural, and that's really, really healthy. One thing that I do want to say, and this is really important, you know, I know that so you probably have siblings. Most people do, at least one. I know that you had like massive differences whenever you were kids, but think about anybody else that has seen you at your lowest of lows whenever you were a little kid, whenever you were like a fucking baby, and has been there the entire way, right? Except for like your parents, which I know it's like really hard. You know, parents can be really, really shitty, but your siblings, they grew up in they grew up in the same situation that you did. And so they're going to be a lot more similar to you than your parents. Who else can say that they've been through all the same things that you have? Who else has had the same life milestones, right? They've seen you at your worst, and they still accept you, and they can still smile around you. And, you know, they know everything that you've been through, all the embarrassing shit. You know, all the embarrassing shit that they went through. Hopefully that's not too, you know, pushed to one side or the other. Hopefully it's more of an equal balance. Otherwise, like, I'd be a little uncomfortable. Anyways, you know, your siblings are very, very important, and it's very important to keep up with them. I know that people kind of have, it's hard for people because a lot of siblings would like fight whenever they were younger, and like they wouldn't get along, like they would hate each other, or they'd be like the literal antithesis of each other. But honestly, there's nobody else in the world that you're going to be able to rely on quite like, you know, a sibling. You know, it's basically like having more of you. Like, if that makes sense, like you're such a similar person. You're related very closely. Like, I think that's as close as you could be related to somebody as a brother or sister. Maybe a parent. I don't know if there's anybody that could be as related. Anyways, you're very related to this person. You've grown up with them. You've seen them grow. You've seen them change. They've seen you change. They've always been there. Maybe whenever they were a kid, you had hiccups because you were idiot kids. But now that you're assumedly, you know, my audience is becoming more of an adult, 18, 19, 20, 21, and so on. You know, if you completely push your siblings away, you're making yourself that much more alone in life whenever you don't need to be. And I understand if they're like shitty people. Plenty of people have shitty siblings. I understand if they get hooked on drugs or whatever. You got to do what you got to do. It's unfortunate, but it's not your fault. But if they're perfectly normal and healthy, and you just have some stupid fucking vendetta from whenever you guys were like 17 and like 19 or whatever the fuck, and you're just like, well, I don't want to talk with them because they were an idiot whenever I was also an idiot whenever I was a kid. Think about whenever you were like, assuming that you're like an adult now, so think back to whenever you were 15, how stupid you were. Are you going to hold that above somebody else's head for the rest of your lives? You shouldn't do that, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you were 60 years old, like your entire life. You could have spent your entire life, and you could be dying, and they would be one of the people who were there holding your hand. All right. That's basically all that I want to talk about. You know who's good in your life. And I want you guys to, if you haven't, just think of somebody that's been good to you, that is a good friend or a good member of the family. If you haven't messaged them recently, just send them a text. It's really important, and it really makes them happy. You know, don't just let people, like good people, slip out of your life because they're the only thing that separates you from like a crackhead. I'm serious. Yeah, just try and get along with your family. All right. See you.